Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday. I know today's Saturday. We still have a good show for you. We have the mainstream minute, and then we're going to get into how to keep your memory. Because I'm sure most of you have known, may have in your family, or seen on television, or in some capacity seen a person who has memory problems, can't remember, certain things. Maybe even Parkinson's. The most popular person would be Muhammad Ali, who had Parkinson's. Aaliyah, thank you for coming in. And then a lot of people may have heard of people with strokes or, concussions, like a lot of these football players and hockey players have a lot of head injuries, and then later on in life, after they get older and stop playing the sport, they start having a lot of problems with depression and memory and rage. And one of the most popular people of that was a guy named Junior Seau that used to play for the San Diego Chargers most of his career, and he wound up committing suicide. So that's what we're going to deal with today, so you all will have a little more empowering information to be able to decipher some of the public information, and also maybe even to put things in a better context that you can help your own family member that may be dealing with something like that. Raphael and Luisha, thank you for coming in. So let's go ahead and ask the Creator to give us grace and the ability to have an open mind, to be willing to accept new, good information, apply it, and see how it changes your life. And I also ask personally for grace with my own impediments and my own ego and my own arrogance. May the God remove that and allow me to be a good vessel for your benefit. So with that being said, let's get started. Today we're going to start with the mainstream minute. And for those of you who also follow my Instagram page, for those of you who don't, the Instagram page is the Ultimate Wellness Group. I did a post earlier this week about water, and I was actually in the vicinity of a water treatment center, so I just went a little closer and tried to take some pictures, and you could see how brown the water was. And most of us would look at a water treatment center and look at the water. Victor, thank you for coming in. And look at the water. If it's very brown, we of course probably initially would have a question like, well, how do they get that brown water and make it clear the way it comes through my pipes? And that's a process. That's why they call it a water treatment center, right? They do a lot of things to the water to try to make it acceptable for us from a smell perspective, and then using this to wash your hands, brush your teeth, take your baths. A lot of us use tap water to cook our foods. And the honest truth is that we have to take into consideration that this water is water that comes from the sewer, meaning that prior to it going to this treatment center and then coming back to you, it had human feces, probably animal feces. It has toilet paper. It has people blowing their nose, wiping themselves. It's urination. There are all the different chemicals that we use in our house to clean. Whatever we're dumping down in the toilet, dumping in the sink, all of that is winding up in the sewer, which means that all of that is winding up in the treatment center, the water treatment center. So when you think about turning on your tap water in your bathroom, turning on your shower, turning on the sink in your kitchen, and whatever you plan on doing with that water, you have to consider these things. You have to consider all these things that were in the water at one time, and then how do they take the water out? What do they do to the water to so-called make it acceptable for us? Now, there are a lot of government agencies that are supposed to be involved with that, and you have some of your local agencies, your municipal agencies that are responsible to making the water at a certain supposedly healthy level for us to use. And that's what this article is about. So let's take a quick look at a few things that they're mentioning in this article. But of course, again, this is on MSN Health, and that's the header of this article: bottled water versus tap water. Which one is better? Well, There is no argument as far as I'm concerned, because I wouldn't suggest anybody drink water that used to have all those things I just mentioned in it. But it kind of goes through here and it talks about, the amount of money that's being spent on bottled water. And then, of course, it talks about the other aspect, and that's tap water, and the number of poor people that don't have any access to anything different. And they go into what happened in Flint, Michigan, and they're making it seem as if Flint, Michigan is an isolated incident, and unfortunately it's not. There are many, many major city water municipal tables that have very, very high levels of lead, very high levels of mercury, very high levels of other contaminants. And so, this article, I think, was very, it was very intricate in dealing with a lot of different subject matters, but it really just muddies the water and makes it more difficult for people to make a decision. Again, here you're talking about BPA in the plastic, which is a problem. There's no question that's a problem. Is there a health difference? And of course, when you're talking about your health, you always have to, if you listen to me, you always have to come back to God, and you have to say, well, what did God do? How does God make water? And a lot of people talk about, rivers and lakes and streams, which is the most healthy water, because the running of the water, and then the water going through dirt and the water going through rocks and things of that nature, that's actually the cleansing process. And so a lot of people will say things like, well, they're animals in nature, and they defecate in the water, and they take baths in the water, and they walk in the water, and all those type of things. Absolutely. But the natural process of cleaning the water, all of those things that we just mentioned, the defecation, urination, the walking in the water, bathing in the water, that's what the dirt, that's what the rocks, that's what the running water, that's what all that is. That's the cleansing process, a natural cleansing process. And then in nature, the natural cleansing process also includes the distillation process, which is the evaporation. The water goes up in a fine mist that we can't see, produces clouds. Clouds gather together, they rain, and then the water comes back down to the earth. That is a distillation process. But man can never equate what God does. God's system is perfect. And so he produces a perfect water for us in spring water. And so, again, my aim is always to come to these articles and help people decipher them, so that you can continue, as you learn more and more information, that you continue to put yourself in a position where you are deciphering information and making the best choice for yourself. So, bottled water versus tap water, which one is better? Well, there's actually no comparison whatsoever. Spring water out of a bottle is always going to be best. Right now, that's the suggestion that I make, because you cannot trust these government agencies, because they are paid to decide whatever the money decides. And drinking water in the way that God makes is always best for your body. Now, for all of you children out there, you have to drink water. You have to learn how to hydrate. But for adults, your key to not having any anxiety after listening to this type of, or reading this type of article, you have to understand that if you just do the best you can, yes, there's some problems with the plastic getting into the water. Yes, there are probably some imperfections in spring water in some of these companies in the way that they do it. But tap water, coming from after defecation and all that, and then the chemicals that they use and the processing that they do in these plants, that is very, very dangerous and very, very detrimental to your health. So my suggestion is drink spring water. You try to find spring water in the area of the country or the world that you live in that's the most north. And I say that for the United States. In your country, if you are in a different type of manifestation of what's north and south and north, then you have to do some research. Why do I say that? Because in the United States, the country is highest in the north and it goes lowest towards the south. In Canada, my understanding is that there's the exact opposite, where the southern part of the state is highest and the northern part of the state is the lowest. So that's why you have to do research for your part of the country or your part of the world. How does the water table run? What's higher, what's lower? Dunny Leg, thanks for coming in. Yes, it's a critical topic, I agree. And so in America, because the water runs south, if you're in the northern part of the country, your water is probably more pure. As you get more south, your water is more contaminated from the fertilizers, the chemicals they put in the rivers, the fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides that are in the water, in the soil that seep down into the water tables. So the farther south you get your water from, the worse it is. And do your own research. There's a lot of information out here about the practices of some of these water companies. Now, I have personally done many, much research on Ozarka, which I don't trust at all. Crystal Geyser, which I have literally visited some of their facilities and seen that I think that they are, in comparison to some of these companies, they are trying to be more responsible. I know Arrowhead out in California is probably one of the most responsible companies I've ever seen when it comes to water. And that water in those California mountains are very pristine. They come straight from the melting of the snow. And so, you got to do your research because it's very important for you to drink water. And I think it's the best for your health to drink bottled water at this time. And any potential problems that you'll get from the bottled water, your fasting will eliminate that from your body because fasting is your healing potential, okay? Aaliyah says, what is the difference between alkaline and spring water? Well, great question. Spring water would be water that comes directly from either a river or a stream. Like one of the Crystal Geyser water places that I visited was in Georgia, and it was up in the mountains, and as the water is coming down from those mountains, their facility is right there. They gather it, and of course they take out all the dirt and all of the other things that are large pieces of things in it, and they say that they don't heat it, they don't treat it or anything, they just cleanse it through filters, and then they put that in the bottle and get it out to the people. So that's spring water. You can also get spring water from underground tables because there are underground aquifers that collect water, and that's supposed to be some of the best water because the dirt and the rocks are actually cleaning it as it seeps down through that. Now, alkaline water is when they take whatever. They may take water from the tap. They may take water from bottled water. It depends on, it usually varies what the source is, but they put it in a machine and they send electrical currents through it. And so those electrical currents kill everything that is live in the water. And what makes the pH go up is that all of those live things are dead now, and you don't have any activation of that water. So, there are plenty of my other shows that I actually go into depth about the alkaline water. I do not suggest that at all. So, if you all get a chance, please check that out. But that's the difference. I hope I answered the question. Let me know, Aaliyah. Okay, so now it's time to get into the subject matter for today, and we're going to be talking about brain health. Danny Muhammad says, I have read about plastic bottles can cause health care issues. How can this be so? Excellent question. Plastic bottles have, number one, the plastic that's made for most of these bottles, most of these companies, of course, are not in business. And let me take that back. All of these companies are in business to make money. I don't know one company that's business principle is the health of public, the health of people, the health of individuals. I don't know of any companies like that, except my own. There may be some physicians, there may be some natural healing doctors out there where that is their primary goal or one of their primary goals, but you can tell by a person's actions whether or not it's about money or otherwise. So these bottled water companies are in business to make money. And so a lot of them are using the cheapest plastic possible. Now, when you use cheap plastic, it leaches the chemicals that produce the plastic easier. So when you put your bottled water in the freezer, like today is very hot in Texas, and so somebody may be going out to do something in public, outdoors in this type of climate, and so they may freeze their water. Well, when you freeze your water, freezing causes some of those chemicals to leach into the water. So now you've frozen water and you've made it worse. Same with heat. Some people take bottles of water, like sometimes I'm driving in public and I see some of these construction workers or some of these guys driving in trucks, and they keep their bottled water in the back of the truck. As long as that sun is beating down on those bottled waters, it causes the leaching of some of those chemicals, because understand that a lot of plastics come from oil waste. So when companies go and they dig oil out of the ground, pull it up, and they make gasoline or whatever products they're making from it, the leftover byproducts of that process is what they use to make a lot of plastics. And so there's some very toxic chemicals in some of that stuff. And so when you freeze and or heat your bottles, you cause some of that to leach into the water. And now when you drink it, you are actually putting some of those chemicals in your body. And there have been many studies across this country where they're testing people's tissues, testing people's blood, and a great percentage of the population have signs of minor plastic particles in their blood. And so I hope I answered your question, Danny. Let me know. Brother Jeffrey, thank you for coming in. Danny says, is cold water or room temperature water best for drinking? Excellent question. Going back to the example I used just a minute ago about it being 90 or 100 degrees and people are drinking cold water, just imagine if in that hot temperature somebody were to come and take some ice water and throw it on you. It would be a shock. Sometimes some people can literally in hot temperatures go into very cold temperatures in a very fast manner, and it literally cause a reaction in the body that we call an autonomic reaction, and people can faint and pass out. So it is a shock to the body to put something real cold on the outside. So just imagine what's going on the inside. When you drink real cold things with ice and icy things in hot weather, you are literally causing some damage to the inside of your body because it's a shock. Real cold temperatures can damage body just like people getting, going up into the mountains and climbing up in the ice, and their fingers start to turn black because that cold is killing them, right? Same way as heat can burn and kill tissue, and you see the blisters and the blackness of the skin in heat. So these are the possibilities when you drink water too cold. My suggestion is to always drink water that is as close to room temperature as you can. I understand that people don't want to drink warm water. They want it a little bit cool, and that's not even against nature. If you go to some rivers and you go to some lakes and you go to some streams, the fact that water is coming from a higher elevation and it's running, it is cooler. And sometimes you can put your hand down in a stream and that water is pretty cool. Well, that would be our natural process of drinking water. That's the natural process of animals drinking water. So the water being cool, I don't think is a problem. When the water is very cold and it's real cold and it causes you the teeth pain, we get the brain freeze. When you're drinking stuff that cold, that is doing damage to the inside of your body. So let me know if I answered your question, Danny. Those are very good questions. So let's go ahead and get into the subject matter, and I'll answer questions if that's what you all have, okay? So as a beginning, let's just take a look at some anatomy. There you have the brain and how it sets itself in relation to all the nerves. You look in the face. You see up here in the face where you have that circular nerve that goes around, and this would be your mouth and your teeth, right? And that's why we have things like brain freeze. You put some ice cream or an icy or some ice in your mouth and you hold it there too long, or you're drinking something that's real cold too fast. These nerves are sending those pain fibers right up into the brain. That's why you have brain freeze. It's these nerves right here. So I'm just trying to show you an example of the brain, and that's the cerebellum. That's the back part of the balance of the brain, and then it goes down into the brain stem, which is under the cerebellum, and then you have your your spinal cord that comes all the way down here. And what you're looking at is the extension of the brain to the whole body. All of those green things are the nerves that send information all over the body. So what is it that's happening when you stub your toe, or you step on a nail, or you step on a rock and you're walking barefoot? That pain fiber will send that message from your foot all the way to your brain. Because when you get stuck with something in your foot, the first response is that a nerve has to take that information, what? To the brain. And then the brain says what? Ooh, that's painful, that hurts. Send a message back, move your foot. Now all of us know that happens like that. You step on on a nail, or you do something that hurts your foot and you move it immediately. That's how fast this system works. Information back, much faster than I just did with my finger. I hope that makes sense. Just want to show you just a general perspective of what the nerves look like in the overall body. And then when we look at a nerve from a very microscopic perspective, that's what you're looking at. This is the center part, or the nucleus of a cell, just like any other cell, but of course a nerve cell is going to look a little different. These are the extensions that send information out from a cell, and also from a nerve cell, and also get information back too. And these are what we call the myelin sheaths. I don't want to get into too deep of science, but I have to mention these things because when we talk about some things later, it's going to make sense. This is all fat right here. Most of this here that you're looking at, the green, is amino acids. And so that's why when you're talking about brain health, the two things that are very important about your diet are amino acids and fat. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Here is just a quick example of an injured nerve, and you see that right there they have it cut, and so this nerve back here is dying, and then it says attempted repair. So as you look at this reality, you're looking at down here at the bottom where that nerve repaired itself. That has to happen pretty quickly. The reparation of a nerve has to happen pretty quickly after it's injured. Otherwise, you get situations like people that were paralyzed, okay? Now, just another, again, I'm not going to go too far into the science, but the reason why the nerve can activate and send messages so quickly, like I was just talking about, right? We're talking about stepping on something, and that information gets to this brain so quick and then comes back to tell you to move your foot, your hand, right? You touch something hot, sends the information, comes back so quick, and you move your hand so that it doesn't get burned anymore. Well, that happens so quickly because of what we call a synaptic vessel. So this literally is a very, very, very small pace. This whole thing right here is something that you can't see with your eye. That's how small it is. But these little particles can sometimes be sodium, can sometimes be magnesium, can be calcium, can be potassium, can be a lot of different things in the body, but they move so quickly in that they're moving from this side to this side. It activates this side to go to the next section, and it's doing the same thing. So these things can happen very quickly, and that's the reason. I like to make sure people see these type of things because nothing is magical, nothing is ethereal in the body. Everything comes down to absolute science. And that's why if we learned how to take care of this body better, we would get much better results. That's just another example of how real small things can move so fast. And as you see, that arrow is the direction of the nerve impulse. So this nerve impulse is moving because of what? Because these molecules are moving in and causing that electrical response to move very quickly in the hand or the foot, like I was mentioning before. Melva, you say, thank you for coming in. First of all, Cheryl X, thank you for coming in. You say, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about tuning in or sending and receiving, is it only the brain that's involved, or are these nerves involved, or what? Excellent question. Actually, the brain is nothing but millions and trillions of these. This neuron is the microscopic aspect of the brain. So let's go back and take a look at the brain, right? So there's a picture of the brain. All of us have seen it, right? This is just a specialized collection of these much smaller. This large vein, right? The largest vein, the largest nerve in the body is this one down here. It's called the sciatic nerve. That's what you hear a lot of people when they have back problems. This is a compilation of a lot of different nerves coming from different aspects of the lower back. They come together and they produce this big nerve. Why does it have to be so big? Because it's sending all of this down into the leg. And that's why it's so big. It's coming together to produce something to take care of the whole lower part of the body that doesn't have spine right next to it. Hope that makes sense to you all. But when we come back and look at this nerve cell with all the specialized information that it does by sending and returning, if you put a whole bunch of these together, you might have a little node. If you put trillions or billions of these together, you have a brain. Let me know if I answered your question, Melva. And that aspect about sending and receiving information, I know some people may think that sounds crazy, but some of you have literally had this happen. You will think of a person and they'll walk through the door. You'll think of a person and they'll call you on the phone. You'll think of a person and within a couple of days, you wind up being in some place where you're right next to this person. Those things aren't happening by happenstance. Those things are happening because we really have those ability. We're just so out of tune with how to keep this system working so perfectly that we're not able to exact that to happen when we desire to. But we can get there. And that's one thing that I have as a goal of mine, is to be able to do that regularly, to be able to tune into all of you that I know personally, be able to send a message with my mind and you get it without having to turn on the phone and call you. Alan Bowden, thank you for coming in. And Donita Lake says, that's amazing. Yes, this is an amazing body. So here's just another cross-section picture of, Melvin, you just finished talking about the brain and the neuron. This is the brain matter, right? When we look at this picture right here, we talked about this movement that's going on here, and then we talked about this over here being the protective mechanism. This is fat. When you look at this brain, you're looking at mostly fat. So it's a whole bunch of nerves that came together and the fat that's there to protect it. Shaolin Soldier, thank you for coming in. And so this cross-section of this brain is, peace to you as well, brother. You're talking about cutting it in half. Now this is one section, and this is the other section, which you can see down here, right? So this is going right in the middle of the brain and separating these two sides. The amazing thing is that we have this right here called the corpus callosum. This material right here is the connection between the two. So everything that happens that may be something that the right brain accepts and something that the left brain accepts, it's going to travel back and forth through this right here. So nothing is not shared. Every activity is shared with the whole brain so that it can put everything together. It's going to make a little more sense in a few minutes. This is what we call the cerebellum. That's about the balance and our ability to be able to close your eyes and touch your nose, or close your eyes and reach for that doorknob when you're walking at night. This is the brain stem where your breathing centers are and your heart beating system. This right here, you crush this, you die. And that's why you see in a lot of these movies when they're hitting people in the back of the head, that is, most of the movies, what they do is fake. Don't believe what you see in the movie. But the concept of what they do in the movie has some scientific reality. If a person gets hit in the back of their head hard enough to damage this system, your brain and your lungs shut down immediately because it's controlled by this system right here. So just wanted to break down a little of that. And then, of course, now we're going back down into the spinal cord. It's protected by the bones, yada, yada, yada. Okay, that's not really part of today. I just wanted to give just a basic reality of some basic structures in the brain. So now we get to some of the major areas. You're talking about the frontal area, the parietal, the temporal area, and the occipital. These are different parts of the brain that deal with different situations. Of course, this over here is a lot of sensory, like hearing and some touch and things of that nature. This is eyesight. This has a lot to do with a lot of the emotional aspects, and this has to do with memory and how we learn and all those type of things, right? Now, when we look at an aspect of the brain that kind of shows the different areas of the body and how it's affected, this is just another example of what we looked at the beginning, the brain and its connection to all the different body parts. And right here, you're looking at all the manifestation of that, okay? So if you look here, we break the brain and the spinal cord down into sections. So you have the C section, you have the T section, you got the L section, and the S section. Cervical, man, I'm forgetting the doggone word that quick. But anyway, the T section, I'll get it in a minute. Then you have the L, which is the lumbar, and the S is the sacrum. And so all of these different areas of the spinal cord represent different areas of the body. So if you see right there across your chest, the top of your front part of your chest is controlled by C4. C4 is up here in the neck. If you look down here, what we were talking about a little earlier about the largest nerve in the body, which is the sciatic, that nerve sends out information you see around the butt all the way to the inside of the leg, all the way down to the foot. That green section is the outside of the leg all the way down to the front of the foot. You can see even some of that in the front. So this system, I'm going through this not because I want you all to know a whole lot about the science of these things, but I'm going through a lot of this because I want you to understand how scientific this system is. There is no happenstance about this system. This is a perfect system that was put together by a perfect something superior than us. So I'm saying that for those of us who use the term God or a derivative of that, or people who do not believe in God, you may be an atheist. It doesn't make a difference. I'm not trying to get into those differentiations. What I'm saying is that regardless of what your perspective is, if you're an atheist and you believe in science, then when you look at this type of reality, you say, wow, that's some pretty serious science. There's a whole lot of checks and balances system in this brain functioning that has to be taken care of well in order for it to take care of us. Now, what is the major point of today's show? The major point of today's show is about taking care of your brain health, because there probably are none of us on this show tonight, none of you that have tuned in doesn't know somebody who has a memory problem. My father was a dentist, worked in the dental field for years. In his early days in practicing, asbestos is a huge thing that they use to do some shining of dentures and partials and things of that nature. Well, we know asbestos causes many problems in the brain, many problems in the lungs, many problems in the body. My father did a lot of work with aluminum, a lot of work with mercury. So he had a lot of damage to his brain. My father was a very health conscious person. But when he started developing memory problems, he went down very quickly. He did not want to be in a condition like that. He did not want to be in a condition where the people were taking care of him. So because of his mentality of not wanting to be there, he became severely depressed. He became irritable. He became sometimes unbearable by some people that were taking care of him. Unbearable living in the house with my mother to a point where she couldn't do it by herself. How many of you have had experiences like that? How many of you could even conceive on how painful that is to get to a point where you can't walk by yourself? You can't leave a house by yourself. You can't drive anymore. You don't remember how to get places anymore. Sometimes don't even remember. I mean, my father didn't even know who I was sometimes. It's painful for us, but imagine how painful that person is. Well, if that's not what you want, that's what today's show is about. We're going to talk about some very specific problems, and we're going to try to help you kind of decipher through some of the stuff that you hear when it comes to memory problems. And then I believe you'll be a little more empowered to understand, but then also how to get busy and take care of your own health, because some of you that are listening have a fear of losing your memory. Some of us have a fear of winding up where we see people in our family, whether they be mother, father, grandparents, uncles, aunts, whatever the case may be. But I'm here to tell you that what you're doing today, what you did yesterday, what you did on Thursday, these are the type of things. Wrapping your barbecue in aluminum, putting all the food in aluminum pans and then covering it with more aluminum. The tops on your toothpaste has aluminum on it. When you buy certain food, you open up the whatever the, like, let me give an example, like some of these bottles of vegetable broth or chicken broth or beef broth or whatever broth. When you open those containers, that little top is aluminum. Sometimes the container itself is aluminum. Why are there so many chip companies nowadays that used to have their bags in plastic are now putting their chips in aluminum bags? I don't know what the answer to that is. I know it's dangerous. It's probably a money-oriented thing. I don't know which one would be more expensive, plastic or aluminum. I haven't done the research. The point I'm making to you is that on these everyday choices that you make, you have to stay away from things that have the potential of causing harm to your nerves. Causing harm to a nerve is the same as causing harm to your brain, because your brain is just a collage of nerves, right? In previous programs, I've discussed like the difference between an individual sugar molecule, a carbohydrate, and a starch. Individual sugar would be like having one chair, right? And we're talking about stackable chairs. 2 or 3 chairs stacked on top of each other could be like a carbohydrate. That's 2 or 3 sugar molecules. If you have 50 or 60 chairs stacked on each other, that's a starch. Well, the same thing occurs when you're talking about nerves. If you have one individual nerve, that's a part of the body that's not very sensitive, right? How many of you in your lifetime have taken, I know we used to do this all the time when we were young, you take a needle and you stick it through the little thick skin right here, these calluses. You don't even feel that, right? And why don't you feel that? Because there are not a lot of nerves there. But nobody would want to do that on the tip of your nose. Nobody would take a needle and stick it in their tongue. Now, I do see some people out here with these tongue piercings and all that kind of stuff. But believe me, that's not something that comes without pain. You know, a lot of us have had children, and we get in these crazy ideas to get the child pierced when they're very small so that they won't have, that hurts like heck. That's why that child starts crying like crazy. That's why children cry when they get immunizations. The needle's not that big, but there's still pain because there's certain parts of our body where there are more nerves, right? So if you have one nerve versus 2 or 3 nerves together versus a whole bunch of nerves together, you're going, the more nerves you pack together, you're talking about nodes of nerves. And then the greatest is, of course, the example of the brain. There are nodes all over our bodies that have requirements that they take care of in the body. All right, so let's get down to a couple of these. Sharon Crockett, thank you for coming in. Some of these medical issues that a lot of us deal with, and then we, of course, want to finish out with some, of course, beneficial things that we can do to take care of our brain health. Now, so here is an example of what is the most common reality when it comes to memory problems. And I want everybody to understand that that is the medical term that means memory problem. Okay, dementia. Dementia is a disorder, right? It says characterized by decline in brain functioning, memory problems, confusion, and behavioral problems. So that's the generalized term. When you hear people say Alzheimer's and things of that nature, that's a specific type of dementia. You can get dementia by having too many strokes. You can get dementia by getting your brain pounded by boxing. You can get dementia by having Parkinson's disease. You can get dementia by taking chemotherapy. You can get dementia by being an alcoholic for many years. So dementia is just a general term. And then we can get into very specifics on how dementia can be separated in different classes. I hope that makes sense. David Hawthorne, thank you for coming in. The most common cause of regular dementia is clots in blood vessels in the brain. So in your leg, it's a varicose vein. In your brain, it's an area that didn't get enough blood flow, and that area stops to work. I just finished saying a few minutes ago when we looked at a picture of the brain about the left side and the right side communicating and all the emotional centers being tied to things, right? Because some of you on this call have lost a close family member. Now, I could mention that, and some of you, and you know, I'm not meaning on this program, but I mean if we were sitting face to face, we could mention your family member, and you literally start shedding tears. Well, why? Because the memory of your mother, we talked about the memory being in this area, right? This is the memory area up here in the front. But your memory area of your mother is tied to the emotional aspect of the brain. Why? Because she's not with you anymore. So there's sadness, maybe even some anger, maybe even some depression that's associated with the memory of your mother. All of these parts of the brain work together. There's no such thing as one part of the brain doing one thing and not being attached to these other things and working together. As I always say, the human body is a system. You can't take one part of the brain and say this is a part for memory and take that part out of the person's body, put it somewhere else and say, okay, that person's going to have a good memory. That person's going to know. All these things are tied together, along with balance and all the other things that go down into the spinal cord and deal with what happens. So small blood clots cause damage to areas of the brain, and you literally will have functioning start to decrease. And that's why you can look at an older person and watch them walk or watch them do things that they used to have a lot of confidence in, and they don't have confidence anymore because they've been causing slow damage to their brain over the years. by some of the things that I mentioned earlier that I will repeat in a few minutes. Here's what most people hear of the most, and that's Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's, just another arrogant person that wanted to put their name on something of the body. So, it's not that necessary for you to remember Alzheimer's, but of course that's a very popular term. But we're talking about a disease where you have to actually go into the brain and take some of the brain tissue and study it in order to be able to say it's Alzheimer's, because he put his name on a particular way that the brain deteriorates. But this just happens to be a view of the brain where you're looking at normal brain and you're looking at Alzheimer's brain, because what happens in some of these, not some, in most of these tissues, is you're having a binding of these cells. So you have a whole bunch of nerves that are working together, and you start binding them up with this fibrous tissue, right? Let me show you all what I mean. Here is a scar on my arm, right? You see that? Scar right there. I got bit by something, and then I started scratching it, turned into a scar. Well, what is a scar? A scar is dried blood, dried cells that are trying to heal, but it also binds. It pulls. It pulls that tissue together, and that's why sometimes when you look real closely at a scar, you can see that the tissue around it looks like it's being pulled, it's being tightened, right? That's the healing process. The healing process pulls things together for the healing process to take place, and then things start to settle out when the nerves are regenerated and caused to get back to almost normal. So you're looking at a brain that has abnormal tissue going on in it that this person put their name on, but it's causing what? Drawing of your brain tissue. Doesn't it make sense that if that's the way it normally looks and most of that blue is water, that when you start drawing, it's going to cause some damage? When you start drawing, it's going to be decrease in functioning. So this is what happens. Most of these type of problems that we have in the brain, there's a lot that we still don't know. But one of the things that I am sure of is that we can greatly slow or even eliminate this from happening by taking care of our healing potential. This most of us have heard of, Parkinson's disease. Most popular person that I know of that had Parkinson's disease is Muhammad Ali. So a lot of us that remember Muhammad Ali when he was a boxer, he's one of the most smooth, one of the most athletic, one of the most quick thinking people that you know. And then watching him get closer to death, he literally was very slow in his movements. He was shaking all the time. His speech was very slurred. You could barely hear and understand what he was talking about. He was a lot less slow. He was a lot more slow in his response when people would speak to him, ask him questions, because his whole brain started to slow down. But it wasn't because of just one problem. Part of the problem was he's a boxer, so he was getting punched in his head a lot of his career. Now, he's one of the ones that didn't get hit as much as some of the other ones, but he did take some beatings, and so his brain tissue was damaged. But when it comes to Parkinson's, we're specifically having a problem with that in the square, and that's the area called the substantia nigra, a dark aspect of the brain that is responsible for a lot of communication between what? The brain and the spinal cord, the brain and the other side of the brain and the coordination aspect of us. So that's why you watch people, they start shuffling. Why? Because they don't have confidence in their balance anymore. And this just happens to be the center. It would be like going towards downtown, right? If any of you just have a mental picture of the city that you live in, you could be on one highway. Here in Houston, we have 45, we have I-10, we have 59, and they all come from different aspects going into the city, right? But when you get downtown, what happens? They all come together, and then when you come during rush hour, you get what? You get stuck in this area, right? So that would be a good example of this. The brain is trying to communicate with all different parts of itself as well as the rest of the body through this section. And if this section starts to get destroyed, this section is not being taken care of correctly, you have a traffic jam. And so you have people that start to lose their functioning and lose a lot of the abilities that they used to have because the body is not able to do what it was made to do. All right? Last disease we'll talk about, and then we'll get to solutions. is multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is mostly, one of the greatest symptoms is weakness. And so what they say, and I am saying what they say because I don't believe it, is that our immune cells start attacking our own body. And for those of you who want some very specific information on autoimmune diseases, I did a whole show on that, so please go check that out. But just in short, why would a God that we serve cause our body to attack itself? It doesn't make any sense. And that's not what's happening. These are fatty sheets, as I talked about earlier. The most important type of foods, or I should say the products from food that we need in our body to take care of our brain, for the nerve actual cell, this green part, it's amino acids. That's the largest part of this, amino acids and water. These sheaths are made mostly by fat. Why are the immune cells attacking fat? Because in the human body, most of our toxins are stored in fat. If you have a big old belly, if you've gained a lot of weight over the years, my suggestion to people that are very overweight is you should never try to lose weight fast, because when you lose the weight, you'll be pushing all these toxins out into your body. And it's the same in the brain. It's the same in all aspects of the body. The fat is where a lot of toxins are. And so these immune cells aren't attacking the body. These immune cells are attacking the toxins. And the body has some collateral damage. If somebody was trying to kill us and we were all in the same room, I wouldn't say trying to kill us. We were all in an auditorium. I'm speaking to you all sitting listening, and somebody tries to kill me with a bomb. Some of y'all probably going to be collateral damage. They weren't trying to kill you. They were trying to kill me. We're trying to kill the toxins. And because the toxins are so enthralled and so deeply rooted in some of these tissues, we cause collateral damage. So multiple sclerosis, I have had people heal from this. I haven't had anybody heal from Alzheimer's or Parkinson's yet. I haven't had anybody that dedicated to a program about that yet. But hopefully God will send me somebody so that we can prove it. But here's the key. Doesn't make a difference the name of the disorder. Parkinson's is somebody's name. Alzheimer's is somebody's name. These arrogant people want to go into the body and find something that can make them live on into the future. And so that's why they put their names on parts of the body. The honest truth is that we're talking about a deterioration of the human body in different aspects, and different type of medical problems develop based on the area that is degenerating, right? All of these disease processes that we just discussed are degenerative. What does degenerative mean? It continues to get worse. Where there's not a medical problem that you know of that doesn't get worse. High blood pressure is degenerative. Why? Because eventually it's going to cause you to have a stroke. Diabetes is degenerative because what? Eventually you're going to lose your eyesight. You're going to lose the feeling in your hands, lose the feeling in your feet, and you might have to get your feet cut off, or your leg cut off. Your kidneys deteriorate to a point where you have to get on dialysis. Degeneration. Does it make sense? If you have cholesterol problems, you build up the plaques into your heart, you have a heart attack. Your heart gets weak. You get congestive heart failure. Eventually you can't walk. You can't do much of anything. You sit all the time and you die. These are degenerative problems because we don't know how to take care of the body. And all we can do is take that high blood pressure, take that diabetes, take that cholesterol problem, take any problems, and now we're looking directly at the brain, and we're saying that the brain matter is degenerating. The substantia nigra is degenerating. The ability to produce ACH, acetylcholine, which is the most common neurotransmitter all over the body, that starts to deteriorate. And so you develop these medical problems. These people want to put their names on it. And so now we have a medical community that wants to make you think like you have all these different medical problems. And there pretty much is only one medical problem: degeneration. Don't heal. Hope that makes sense. Melva says, excellent explanation example. Well, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate the compliment. Victor says, are these analogies also applicable to mental disorders like bipolar or schizophrenia? Absolutely. Absolutely. When we're talking about bipolar disorder, you really are talking about, I've got to be honest with y'all, it's just BS. Because bipolar is a normal aspect of life. Here I am sitting in front of you talking about these different situations, and I brought up my father, right? Imagine the day, because I actually sat and watched my father with the rest of my family take his last breaths. What do you think was going on in my head as I'm watching my father take his last breaths? Now, I was trying to keep my family upbeat, so I was saying things to them to try to, encourage them, hey, everything's going to be all right. He's going to be out of pain, whatever, whatever, whatever. But the point is that I wasn't in any happy situation. I wasn't sitting around there smiling and joyous like I just had some great thing happen. No. But if right now, while I'm doing this program, somebody walks in and says, hey, I want to donate $1 billion to you and what you're trying to do with the Ultimate Wellness Group, how happy do you think I would be? Well, hell, that's a bipolar reality. One is at the low end of life and the other is at the high end of life. That's a normal process of life. Every single one of us go through a daily routine where sometimes you may be up, you get some bad news, you may be down. You may wake up down, you get some news, and now you're up because it's good news. Bipolar. That's a normal reality of life. And so when we have things happen to us that may push us into more negativity, like, I know a lady who got two sons killed within, I think it was less than a month. It was like 3 weeks apart. And she lives in the hood. Every time somebody gets killed, she goes crazy. She's never had a chance to come out of that environment where she saw one of her sons die. Not too far down the street, her other son died. She's in constant depression. Why? Because she's in an environment she never had to come up and get pushed up to another one, right? What happens when a person graduates? What happens when a person gets a good job that they've been looking for all their life? What happens to a person that has an idea as a child and all their life they're working towards it and they finally attain it? Like in the movie Acrimony, right? When that brother finally got the money for this idea that he had since he was in college, man, he was on top of the world. Bipolar, right? Schizophrenia is when things can just go haywire. What is it? It's mostly from a perspective of how you bring in information. So a schizophrenic is usually tripping off of information that's coming in. Who is that person? What is that sound? What is that color? What's going on over there? I don't understand that noise. So a schizophrenic has problems with how they're receiving information. What are their receptors bringing in? All their senses. Make sense? So yes, all of these so-called memory problems and these so-called personality problems or these so-called psychiatric disorders are all a problem of something that happened within that person's ability to stay and keep the brain working in a very functional manner. It all has to do with a lot of different things. I mean, some people's parents are doing things when they conceive you. The sperm and the egg has a lot to do with how your body functions later on in life. So drinking and smoking and eating and doing all these type of things, and a lot of us weren't made in any constructive thought process. Like your mother and father didn't say, look, we're going to take care of ourselves and I ovulate on such and such time of the month. What we're going to do is we're going to plan to take care of ourselves really good and we're going to have a baby in 4 months. No, I know I wasn't made like that. I know I didn't produce my children like that because I didn't have this type of information. But a lot of times when a child comes out and they're dealing with certain problems or a young adult starts dealing with these type of problems, it's because some of the horrific possibilities that a mother can do while she's pregnant. So I hope I answered that question. Let me know, Victor. So just getting to a few of the solutions, because although I went through a lot of the different type of problems and what they are where in the brain that some of these problems are occurring, and the other one is I didn't get specific to the brain injury, concussions, automobile accidents, whether it's sports, whether it's boxing, whatever the case may be. A lot of these people develop dementia, and it's because the pounding of the brain has to heal. If you injure your arm, you get a bruise, you get a torn muscle, a torn ligament, whatever, that has to heal. Well, in the brain, it has to heal as well. So if you have a person that can't heal and they develop high blood pressure, can't heal, develop this problem, develop that problem, well, you got problems in the brain too. Like I say, this is not a human body that's individualized. This is a human body that works from the top of this to the bottom of the toe. Everything works as one. When something is going wrong in the liver, believe me, there's a problem in the brain. When something is going wrong in the kidneys, believe me, there's something wrong in the heart. And so when people have medical problems, if you have arthritis, if you have this or that or this or that, if you can't take care of that organ or that joint, how can you take care of the brain? And so we absolutely have to understand that the way we take care of this body every day, starting when you were born, but for some of us who can't do anything about that, how about you start today and make sure that you drink some water? Because you know you should be drinking some water. How about starting today, check out some of our videos and learn what the difference is between hydration and drinking water. Because we're talking specifically about the brain today, we have to make sure that we understand how to put the best foods into the body, which I've already done a program on the science of eating. But specifically for the brain, everybody should be in the process of trying to continue to activate your brain as much as you can. So what are some of the things that we can do? From a dietary perspective, I already mentioned it. The first one should be water. This body is 75% water, this brain is 80% water. You cannot have a healthy brain without being hydrated. Number two, amino acids and fat. So, of course, most of us, when we hear amino acids, we know that that's what protein is broken down into, but we automatically think meat. Get rid of meat. If you want a good brain health, you should stay away from meat as much as possible. Navy beans are the best source. Raw milk is next, and I would probably include avocados, because all three of those foods have a percentage of amino acids and fat that is exceptionally good for your brain. So you should be eating those foods on a regular basis. So Victor Melva says, how does just a little beer or weed affect the brain? I'm sure there's some people out there want to hear it. Let me get to that in just a second, okay? Victor says you absolutely did. Well, thank you, sir. Donita Lake says the amygdala is a part of the brain. Where did you go? Is the part of the brain responsible for emotions? Yes. Well, the amygdala is the actual, as you say, is the actual emotional center. But again, it is attached to so many different things, right? Because you could literally, like I talked about earlier, you could stub your toe and get angry, be like, damn, why did I do that? You see what I'm saying? So that's an emotion that attached to that pain. And so there are other aspects of the brain that tie into that too, but you're actually correct. Troy, thank you for coming in. You say good teaching. Yes, sir. Donita Lake says CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and football players and head injuries, and how the impact this has on our behavior and ability to function. Tau protein. Yes, ma'am. Obviously, you got pretty good knowledge about that. I didn't want to really go into too much intricacy, but you all let me know if this is something that we need to continue and do another show, because unfortunately I got to end on time today because I have another call afterwards. But we could definitely continue this and go in a little more in depth. If you all tell me that that's what you want, then that's what we'll do in the next show in a couple of weeks. But just to finish the good foods, make sure you have navy beans. That's the best source of amino acids with raw milk. And then avocado, because all of those foods have fat and amino acids in them. And then, of course, you never can go wrong by eating a lot of fruit. And you have to make sure that they have seeds in them. Fruit is the food that has the highest amount of phytonutrients. Phyto meaning plant, nutrients are substances that the body needs in order to function correctly, heal correctly. And so every day you should be doing something to make sure that what's inside of your cranium is healing correctly. So you got to put some fruit. And then you have to know the right type of vegetables to eat that also can help bring in some good phytonutrients, and then some proteins that can be broken down to amino acids as well. So your quality vegetables are going to be your broccoli, your cauliflower, asparagus, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, okra, eggplant, and squash. Those are the best ones. They all have to be cooked. You should not eat any of those foods I just mentioned raw, because if you eat them raw, you will not extract the nutrients out of them because of the oxalates and the phytates, which are anti-nutrients, which bound to those nutrients and won't allow them to come out. So I think I covered everything that I wanted to today. I hope that you all enjoyed today's program. I hope you learned something. Donita Lake just mentioned, Denise, thank you for coming in. I think you mean endocannabinoids. Let me know if that's what you meant. But yes, there are a lot of benefits in marijuana, but for all of you marijuana smokers, you will not get any benefit from smoking marijuana. When you put the heat to it, you destroy a very high percentage of anything positive in that. So yeah, it does make you high, gives you that euphoric feeling. But as far as benefits for the body, marijuana is not going to do it when you're smoking it. But the oils that come out of it, and if you put it in certain foods and you prepare it in the right way, because there does have to be some heat to some of the cannabinoid substances in it in order to release them. But we're not talking about burning it. We're talking about heating it up, just like we talked about those vegetables. Okay, so that's the show for today, you all. I thank you all for coming in. Stay tuned. I mentioned about the book. I'm still in the editing process, taking a little longer than I thought. I had planned on releasing the book on July 4th, but there's going to be a little delay. It should come out pretty soon, so keep in touch for that. My schedule is becoming a little more manageable, so I'm attempting hopefully within the next month to get back to doing these programs on Tuesday. So again, thank you for coming in. I appreciate all of you and the support. Remember, if your health is on your mind is on your health, and vice versa. If it's not on your mind, it is not on your health, right? Continue to do the hard work that it takes to have good health, and please continue to come back to the Ultimate Wellness Group, where you can find news that you can use. The Ultimate Wellness Group is on Instagram. The Ultimate Wellness Group is on YouTube. The Ultimate Wellness Group is on Facebook. And the website is theultimatewellnessgroup.com. Remember, I need 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can continue to do programs like this live on Facebook and live on YouTube. And until the next time, which will be 2 weeks from now, we'll have another great subject and another great show. Thank you all. Continue to work hard for your health, and peace.